Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It was one of those slow Tuesday evenings where the diner lights felt a little dimmer than usual. Like they were tired too. The kind of night where the coffee pot never quite emptied but never felt fresh either. I remember tying my apron tighter around my waist, checking the clock above the grill, and thinking about how I still had 3 hours left on my shift and only $20 in my wallet. My name is Emily, and at that moment, I was just a single mom trying to make it through another double shift without my feet giving out on me. I had been a waitress at that small downtown diner for almost 4 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid some of the bills. And more importantly, it let me work hours that matched my son's school schedule. Every shift was a mix of regulars who knew my name and strangers who barely looked up from their phones. Tips were unpredictable. Some nights I went home smiling. Other nights I counted coins at the kitchen table and tried not to cry. That night started like any other. I was refilling sugar jars when the bell above the door rang. I looked up and saw a man step inside who didn't quite fit the place. He wore a simple dark jacket, no logos, no flash, but everything about him looked expensive in a quiet way. His shoes were polished, his watch understated but clearly valuable, and he carried himself with a calm confidence that made the room feel smaller. He chose a booth in the corner, the one most people avoided because it sat under a flickering light. He didn't complain about it. He just sat down, folded his hands, and waited. When I walked over with a menu and my practiced smile, he looked up and met my eyes in a way most customers didn't. Not rude, not flirtatious, just attentive. "Good evening," he said softly. "Coffee, please, black." I poured his coffee and took his order. Nothing fancy. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, comfort food. As I walked back to the counter, I heard one of the cooks whisper, "Who's that guy?" I shrugged. Just another customer, I thought, but something about him stuck with me throughout the meal. He was quiet. He didn't scroll on his phone. He didn't rush. He ate slowly, thoughtfully, like each bite mattered. Once, he noticed me limping slightly and asked if I was okay. I laughed it off, said it was just a long day. He nodded, like he understood more than I had said. When he finished, he asked for the check. I printed it out and placed it on the table, smiling and thanking him for coming in. The total was modest. As I walked away, I noticed him take out his wallet, but I didn't linger. You learn quickly not to hover. Tips are a gamble, and watching only makes the disappointment sharper. A few minutes later, he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the door. He paused at the counter, nodded politely, and left. I waited a moment before going to clear the table, bracing myself. When I picked up the receipt, my heart sank. The tip line read 0, not a penny. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the mix of frustration and exhaustion. I replayed every interaction in my head. Had I done something wrong? Was I too slow? Did I forget to refill his coffee? I forced myself to breathe. It wasn't personal, I told myself. Some people just didn't tip. As I reached to wipe the table, my fingers brushed against something unexpected. Under the plate, folded neatly, was a thick envelope. For a split second, I thought maybe it was trash, a napkin or a note meant for someone else. But my name was written on it. Emily, in careful, steady handwriting. My hands started to shake as I opened it. Inside wasn't cash, not at first. There was a handwritten letter. I leaned against the booth and started to read. Dad had said that he knew leaving 0 on the tip line would hurt. He said he did it on purpose, not to be cruel, but to make sure I didn't miss what he left behind. He wrote about how he grew up watching his own mother work endless shifts, coming home tired and worried, pretending everything was fine. He wrote that he had learned early on that sometimes the biggest help doesn't look like help at first. Under the letter was a cashier's check. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the amount. $50,000. I had to read it 3 times to believe it was real. My knees felt weak. I slid into the booth, tears blurring the words on the page. $50,000 was more than I made in 2 years. More than enough to catch up on rent, pay off my car, and finally breathe. But that wasn't even the part that hit me the hardest. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote that he was a businessman who had more money than he could ever spend. But that money had never brought him peace the way helping others did. He said he chose places like this diner because real stories lived here, not in boardrooms. He thanked me for my kindness, for asking if he needed anything even when I was clearly exhausted. He told me to use the money not just to survive, but to change my life. I didn't know what to do. I showed my manager, who thought it was a joke at first. Then she saw the check and went quiet. We called the number on the letter, half expecting it to be fake. It wasn't. Everything checked out. I went home that night in a daze. My son was asleep, his school books spread out on the table where he had been doing homework with the babysitter. I sat there for a long time, staring at the envelope, feeling like the universe had cracked open just a little. Over the next few days, the story spread. Someone had recognized the man from a news article weeks later. He was a billionaire, one of those quiet ones who avoided headlines. When reporters called, I didn't know what to say. It wasn't about fame. It was about that moment, that decision, and how it changed everything. I paid off my debts. I fixed my car. I started a savings account for my son's college. But the biggest change wasn't financial. It was the way I walked into work afterward. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt seen. Few months later, I received another letter. No money this time. Just a note asking how I was doing. He wrote that he hoped I was well, that he believed in paying kindness forward, and that maybe one day, when I could, I'd do the same for someone else. I still work at the diner, but fewer hours now. I'm taking classes at night, something I always dreamed of but never thought I could afford. My son knows the story, though I keep it simple for him. I tell him that someone believed in us when we needed it most. Sometimes customers still leave 0 tips. Sometimes they leave a lot. But every time I clear a table, I remember that night. I remember how close I was to giving up, and how a single unexpected act changed my entire path. So if you ever feel invisible, like your hard work doesn't matter, remember this: you never know who's watching. You never know how one moment, one choice, can ripple out and change everything. And sometimes, what looks like nothing at all is actually the beginning of a miracle.